It's setting up the live stream as we speak, I
Okay.
think. Okay. Let's see. It's setting up the live stream. Yep, it's working. We're good to go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's episode of Paranormal Encyclopedia. As always, I am your host, Kevin Mears, demonologist and Paranormal Encyclopedia. I am joined by my lovely co-host.
Brian McKinley, vampire author and godfather of vampire thrillers.
There we go. I got him to say the line.
Yeah,
I need fish that I can throw you when you do get it right, or something.
yeah. Maybe little candies.
That fish is traditional, like a seal doing tricks.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I do want to give me a moment, everybody, while I post links on Facebook. Um,
Oh,
but I do want to take a second and apologize for the fact that we haven't been on the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, I was under the weather, and then last week I was away at Dreamation Gaming event. But we are back for the time being, and then in a couple of weeks we're gone again, but only for the one day, hopefully.
yeah. We'll be at a convention.
But all of you should come to the convention and see us live because the convention is going to be very, very cool. We are going to be speaking at um, Telltale Steampunk. Both of us are speaking independently.
Yeah, yeah, that
high.
helps.
So they tell me. Um, but if anybody's wondering, the logic with what we're trying to do tonight is we've been on and off the air for quite a while, off and on for the last year, just about, mostly off. And I've noticed lately we're having an uptick in views, which is wonderful. Thank you all for watching. So I thought it was time to kind of come back to basics and return to form, just to set the parameters of what the show is, what our main topic is, and so forth. Well, I don't object by any means. I love having fiction authors on. We are not primarily a fiction channel. Our topic is demonology and the paranormal, particularly paranormal investigation. I say pretty much at the beginning of every episode that I'm a demonologist and a paranormal investigator. Now, those of you who've been with us a while already know what all this means. But if somebody's tuning in now, you got to go back 9 years of videos to see the first "What is Demonology" video. I'm very proud that we have 9 years worth of videos, but that's a bit of a big ask to go sorting through it and looking for it. So I thought we'd hit the subject again, particularly because, and I think Brian, you'd agree with me, the word demon has a lot of baggage.
Oh, yeah.
People associate with primarily, of course, with Christianity. Christianity has a long history of labeling any spirit or God or anything else that doesn't fit within Christianity as demonic. And that's not what we're about. So very, very, there's the technical term, what technical meaning of what a demon is, and there's what I mean when I say demon. So in technical terms, in demonology, when I say demon, I mean a spirit that has a couple of characteristics. One is that it's an inhuman spirit, which is not to say that it's an animal spirit, but it's a spirit that has never been corporeal. It's never been a living creature. It was created as a spirit. Its all existence is as a spirit. The next characteristic is that it is a malevolent spirit. It actually actively seeks to harm people. Now, categorically, from a demonologist perspective, that's pretty much what we can say for sure. There's a lot of theories about where demons come from, the most famous of which being their fallen angels. But there are, even in Christianity, there are different interpretations. And etymologically, the word has a complicated history. Its roots, as far as I've ever traced back, go back to the Greek philosophers, some of which claimed to actually saw a demon as kind of a guardian angel or a muse. It was an inspiring spirit. They could be good, they could be evil. But for example, Plato and I believe Socrates believed they had a daemon that was advising them on their what they said and wrote. Homer, the famous Greek poet, on the other hand, basically used the word daemon as another word for God. The two were interchangeable. There's some implications sometimes in his writings and in other writers that use it in this context that it's a lower level of God. So you have the big 12 of Olympus, Zeus and Hera and all those, and daemons were lower down the totem pole. And then it's actually a Greek philosopher called Xenocrates who proposes that daemons are this other order of spirits that oppose the gods.
Yeah.
So it's not using the term for evil spirits is not a uniquely Christian concept. Certainly, the idea of demons is not a uniquely Christian concept either. In Judaism, there are Shittim and Dybbuk, which are malevolent spirits. In modern sources, the word Dybbuk is usually used for a malevolent ghost. No constitutional conservative. This is a talk show. There is no join link. We're not looking to have somebody as a guest at the moment. That's a new request. But
unless you're a demon and can speak on the topic,
true.
then you have a guest.
But I'm not looking to have a demon on the show. Nor am I really saying that's who just showed up in chat to ask for the link. Goodbye. That was random. But so those are the Greek origins of the term. Christianity adopted it because of course the New Testament was written in Greek. Hebrew has its own words for it. There's similar ideas in Zoroastrianism, Hinduism. Certainly, it's a big idea in the ancient Mesopotamian religions of the Middle East. Babylon and Sumeria, pretty much natural disasters and diseases were caused by these demonic spirits.
Yeah.
There's a huge.
I think even China and Japan have malevolent spirit in their sort of folklore and mythology.
True, and I think something that's true of Mesopotamian ideas is true in the East as well, where a lot of Mesopotamian ideas, whether it's a demon or a god, kind of depends on what you want from it. Because to use a reference people would know from the movies, Pazuzu, the demon in the original movie The Exorcist, is a Babylonian deity. Now he's not the kindest of deities. He's associated with disease, for example. But one of the reasons that people would invoke him was to protect their children from evil spirits, particularly from the Mashtu, who was his wife and was famously a murderer of children.
Yeah.
But also had positive reasons that someone would potentially pray to her. And in general, it's fair to say a lot of the times, and we've talked about this many times, we talked vampires and werewolves and other supernatural beings, that in the original folklore, there aren't these neat little divisions of this is this and this is that. That's just as true with demons. Even if you want to talk strictly biblical, demon and angel aren't clear dividing lines necessarily in the Old Testament, certainly. Um, you know, God sends a hitman to murder all the firstborn sons of Egypt. It's not a demon, it's not an angel. You know, so I want to give instead my practical definition of a demon as a demonologist, what I mean when I use the term. And it's a much simpler, less loaded definition. I use it to mean a malevolent spirit, something that actively is seeking to harm a person. The person being the client who asked me to investigate their haunted house. That may not be, I mean, I am Christian myself. I do believe in fallen angels. But what I'm calling a demon in a house may not, strictly speaking, be a fallen angel. Or one of the others, again, I promise I'll come back to this, but there are the other ideas of where demons come from. It might be a fairy with a bad attitude. It might be a pissed off ghost. It might be an elemental. The thing is, there's a whole laundry list of names for spirits out there. And I'm generally of the opinion that there's a whole laundry list of different types of spirits out there. But I'm a really, in the field, in a haunted house, I'm a very simple kind of guy. Is there a spirit in the house? Is the first question. Yes or no. If there's no spirit in the house, I go home. I am not a psychiatrist or mental health professional or a plumber or whatever else people may need that's not a demonologist. The next question I have, if there is in fact a spirit there, is the spirit a threat of some kind? Constitutional, I appreciate the thought, but this is not that kind of format. Never was. It's not going to be. I'm not going to invite a complete stranger to join the stream. No disrespect intended to you. I don't know you, but that's not the type of show. Again, you may or may not be a troll. I'm not accusing you of being anything. You're someone I don't know. I don't know why. Nothing about constitutional conservative suggests you have anything to say about demonology or demons. You may, but I don't know that. So I'm not going to invite someone I don't know just to join the stream. We do have guests on from time to time, but that's something arranged in advance. If you're interested in being a guest, you can reach out to me on Facebook. You need to put the there because there's another page that uses the same name, Paranormal Encyclopedia. Message me. If I said that, I apologize. It was not my intention to call you. Thought I said constitutional conservative. I did not mean to say traitor. I'm not a big fan of conservatives, but that is not what I meant. Brian, did I say complete traitor?
I don't think so. No.
I apologize.
I think you were saying troll. Like,
oh yeah, he said I am no troll, and I said I'm not calling you a troll.
right.
Okay, my email will be in the description after the show, man. You can email me that way, but there's no way you're getting onto the Zoom. If you want to stay in it's okay. It's a misunderstanding. I'm very glad that it's a misunderstanding because I don't mean to call you that. Somebody that who I don't know. Why would I call somebody I haven't met? That would just be rude. But yeah, we're not a call-in show. That may be something we look into in the future, but that's not our format at the moment. And in fairness, it's something we've done in the past. But back on point, like I said, my concern is what's happening malevolent is something actually actively harming people. You know, if I hear about a house that's been abandoned for 100 years, that's supposed to be haunted by Satan himself, I don't feel a particular need to go poking it with the stick because nobody lives there. It comes. One second. That's what it comes down to, is the practical nature of what's going on. I am entirely certain I've done cases that I called, to this day, call demons that weren't technically speaking demons.
Yeah.
I don't care. Because here's the other part of my personal experience. Humans use labels. Humans have this desire, this need to name things. Spirits don't care that much. Spirits will use different, their actual true name is something spirits care about. It's something that gives someone power over a spirit. No. But these neat little classifications, you'll see. I've read cases where a demonic spirit identified itself as a Dybbuk. I know I was involved in a case where one gave its true name as a pagan god. They'll lie. They'll tell people whatever they think they want to hear.
Yeah.
And it's not terribly relevant from a practical standpoint of there's a problem in this house and how am I going to fix it? Because the thing is, what will work doesn't matter. It isn't dependent on what type of spirit you have. It's dependent on the faith of the people that are living in the house. If you want to call the spirit a jinn, and it's a family of Roman Catholics, a Muslim imam isn't going to do a lot of good. If you want to call it a demon and there's a family of Muslims, a Catholic priest isn't going to do a lot of good. You want the clergy involved and the rituals and symbolism involved to be based on what the person believes and what the person has faith in. Faith and belief matter more in a spiritual sense than names. At least generic, or titles, I suppose, is a better word. Because otherwise we're getting back into the importance of name.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, now this person is in fact a troll and is being blocked. It's like I've been as polite about it as I'm gonna be. It's time to go. How do I do that?
Never understood people feeling the need to do stuff like that, get into arguments or trolling or whatever.
Yeah, I don't either. It's like, okay, you want to have a chat about the conversation at hand? By all means. If you want to lecture me about how you think the channel should be run, bother somebody who isn't me, because I don't care about his opinion or her opinion. I don't know. It's not exactly a gendered title. Moving on. So, okay, given this admittedly long-winded definition, I guess the next interesting question people wonder is, where do demons come from? And the traditional joke at this point is, well, when a mommy demon and a daddy
demon love each other very much. Yep. I was about to make that joke.
And as funny as that deliberately is, does factor into some theories about where demons come from. But within Christianity specifically, because other religions have other views on the subject. And hey, Chris, welcome to the show. But there are, in Christianity, and to some extent Judaism, there's three major ideas about demons, in my experience. There are other ideas, but the three primary are this. One is that God created something before humans. If you pick up your Bible and read Genesis 1 to Genesis, about halfway through the second chapter, I want to say, It's one creation account, and then another one that does not work. Another one occurs again. One of which is the one most of us are familiar with, Adam and Eve, the Garden of Eden. The other one is much broader and just talks about the creation of man and woman without naming either. In some schools of thought, this is a first creation that God made and became dissatisfied with and destroyed. So the spirits of this first creation are now demons. The second most common theory, actually, okay, there's four theories I'm going to go over. I just remember the second one, another one I wanted to talk about from the Old Testament, which actually sort of relates to this idea. So it's been a long question of why are there two contradictory creation stories in the book of Genesis? Historically speaking, the reality is Judaism adopted aspects of a Babylonian creation myth and added it late into the Bible. And honestly, that's something Dan McClellan has a wonderful YouTube video. Go watch him about it. I'm not that familiar with, but there's an archaeological explanation for it. But theologically, a number of people have tried to explain this. First creation is one common explanation. Another common explanation, which almost everyone who's watching this now has probably heard of at one point or another, is Lilith.
Yes.
That the popular version of the story goes that Adam had a wife before Eve named Lilith. They were created at the same time. And Adam was like, I am the man, you're going to submit to me and accept having sex with me laying down in the missionary position. And Lilith said, no, we're equals. We were made at the same time. You're not better than me. And there's a whole hissy fit, and Lilith storms out of the garden and has in many ways become a feminist figure now, which is something I'm really not a fan of, because there's more to that story where God sends three angels to fetch her back. And not only does she say, no, I'm not going, but she then declares that she is going to kill the children of Adam and Eve. And then there's Jewish talismans that they put around their children with the name of the three angels sent to fetch her back to protect them from Lilith. Now, the thing is, this whole story is a creation of the Kabbalah during the Middle Ages. It's not even implied anywhere in the Bible other than creation of man and woman in one chapter, creation of Adam and Eve in another. Lilith is mentioned in Isaiah, although the word is often translated as screech owl or night terror or something to that effect. And that is the beginning and end of all mentions of Lilith in the Bible. She is much older than the medieval story of her being the first wife of Adam. But in the oldest Jewish legends, she's just a demon. Not only is she a demon, though, she's the mother of demons. Her and Asmodeus or Samael or whatever the satanic figure that particular Judaism is talking about at the time got together and had a bunch of kids. And that's where demons come from. That got adopted in the Middle Ages when she got turned into the first wife, that after she left the garden, her and the devil got together and produced children. But not only is the idea of Lilith older, as a demon, older than her as the first wife of Adam, it's actually older than the Bible. And I mentioned her before by a different name. Lilith is probably drawn from older Sumerian texts. Specifically, she's probably very similar to the Jewish equivalent of Lamashtu. There's also a Babylonian idea of spirits called Lilin, which were sexual demons that attack men at night and fulfill the role that the Christians associate with succubi, which is also something Lilith is heavily associated with and seen as the mother of. So the third category, which is where we start moving into what people are more familiar with, specifically fallen angels. And this is Genesis 6, 1 through 4, which talks about the sons of God being sent to earth and lusting after the daughters of men. And they had children that were these huge, giant children and great, famous and powerful, known as the Nephilim. And then they become so much of a problem, God floods the world. Those original angels and their half-breed children, well, in interpretations where the sons of God are angels, because there's other interpretations, but basically those beings and their children become the demons. And the fourth one is the one that everybody knows, which is Lucifer threw a hissy fit, so said to God, I'm going to be God now. And God said, no, you're not. And Lucy gets thrown out. Satan grabs Lucy by the ear, goes for distance, and throws him to the other end of the universe, creating hell. Which is alluded to in Isaiah and a couple of other places, but is most spelled out in Revelation chapter 12, verse 7 through 9. There is a whole academic school of thought that goes into all of this that is way above my pay grade. But I suppose an interesting question is, which one do I believe? As a Christian, I tend to favor the last two, but I'm not entirely convinced any of them are wrong. I've never run into Lilith personally on a case, but I've run into one of her lieutenants. And I know that the exorcist, Father Joe, I used to work with, had mentioned running into Lilith on cases before. And First Creation, I don't bloody know. Granted, it's also fair to say I don't take the book of Genesis literally, mostly because I think it's somewhat, I don't want to get in. This is not a show about creationism, so I'm not going to get into a whole rant. But sometimes, get on Google sometime, look up the first thing that Adam says to Eve, and tell me, and seriously come back and tell me that looks like what you think what a man seeing a naked woman for the first time would say. As opposed to something much classier and refined like boobs. Let me look. I'm curious because I don't remember. So Genesis 2:23 says, "This at last is the bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man." Think of any teenage boy you've ever met interacting with a woman for the first, like an adult woman for the first time, or seeing naked breasts for the first time. What sounds more likely? This is woman, flesh of bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, or boobs? What do you think, Brian?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the background. He might not have known enough to even think that there was anything strange about them. He might have been jealous, looking at him, going, "Hey, how come you got those and I don't?"
Also, a fair point. There's at least one fictional version of the story I've read that suggests his first response to seeing the first woman was actually to run away and hide because he was shy, which I can also buy.
Yeah.
I mean, also there's a question of literal days. How long was he around? How long watching the animals go at it, for example?
Yeah.
So he probably had some idea of there are women. But my main point is I don't think he would have been that terribly coherent, because I sure as shit no, I wouldn't have been. Chris asks the good question of, what did Eve say the first time she saw Adam? I don't know. Oh, that's fun. Really, the first thing the Bible records Eve saying to Adam is, "Taste this, that it is good," about the forbidden fruit.
Of course, because that's the only real point she serves in the story.
Which is a whole other interesting discussion to be had about what the fruit was, what it symbolizes. And in fact, for example, Jews see that story very differently than Christians do. Since for Christians, it's original sin. That's not an idea in Judaism.
Right.
But we're not, as much as I've thought about trying to do one sometime, we are not a Bible study program.
Yeah, no, I
The
would
one
be
thing,
terrible at that.
I'm not that good at it either. I'm in the shallow end of that. Um, well, that's kind of the point. Let's see. Chris saying that is a hard one question, thinking it over. Assuming as Adam's first words suggest that Eve was granted full power of speech and some degree of vocabulary, my instincts were that would be that whatever Eve said was probably more coherent than whatever Adam first said. Just because guys, girl versus girls.
Yeah. So what about I guess you've talked about the origins or potential origins of demons. So maybe you could talk about the characteristics that you're aware of and that you've witnessed. You know, what can they do? All that kind of thing.
Good question. So the thing to keep in mind is it's one of the problems I have with a lot of Christians that talk about demons is that a lot of Christians either think that they're nearly God in their level of power, with them being these Machiavellian geniuses that are running everything on the planet. You know, the weather wasn't going around today, except now we're blaming lasers. We used to blame witches, you know, is they can control the weather, which historically was something only God could do. Um, People tend to give them too much credit and at the same time, sometimes too little. Um, but generally speaking, demons have an enormous amount of power. Speaking from firsthand experience, they can move objects without around the room with their minds. They have, you know, when they possess human body, they imbue it with an enormous amount of strength. They have a detailed knowledge of everything from people's real names to people's darkest, most embarrassing secrets. Um, they can't foretell the future perfectly, but they're pretty good at making an educated guess. Um, when it absolutely goes crazy, just about everything you've seen in a horror movie can happen. Um, Case in point, if you watch the movie The Exorcist, except for the Reagan's head spinning all the way around the way that it does, which, as far as I know, no one's ever reported. But every other thing you see the demon do in that movie is what is well within a demon's power. That said, for all of that to happen in a single case of demonic possession would be extraordinary. It just doesn't happen that way. It's not likely to ever. You get a bit of it in one case, a bit of it in another case, a bit of it in the third case, not all at once. Um, in terms of limitations, they're not all powerful. They certainly have limitations. One other common mistake people have is the thing to understand about demons is that demons are finite beings. they are not omnipresent. Because a lot of people will think every case of demonic possession is Satan, or almost any case of demonic possession they attribute to Satan. Satan is very powerful, but again, Satan is a finite being. God is omnipresent, which means God is everywhere at once at all times. For Satan to be somewhere, he has to be in that one place at that one time and nowhere else. Just like you and me. He can move very quickly. He can, for all intents and purposes, he can teleport. But if he is possessing little Tina 3 doors down from you, he is not trying to convince President Trump to launch nuclear weapons. He is not trying to convince terrorist leaders in the Middle East to blow up another building. Whatever he's doing, whatever is going on is so important. All of his attention is there.
Yeah.
And for the most part, you're not that important. The thing to realize about that as well is he doesn't need to be everywhere at once. He has demons for that. So a lot of the times when people run into most of the time when someone runs into it, almost all the time, in fact, there's a, just like there are seen as a hierarchy to angels, with angel and archangel and seraphim and cherubim and aphanim and so forth. There's a pecking order to hell. Satan's at the top of the heap. Below him are not the 9 kings or princes. Below them are the archdevils and devils, and then you get into demons, the higher demons and the bottom rung demons, and then you get into the imps. And then way at the bottom you get damn souls. The more powerful, the higher up that ranking system you go, the less time it has for little people. Because the other thing to realize is Satan in particular, but all demons are creatures of pride and arrogance. So it's got to be worth their while. And sometimes it is, but a lot of the times what you'll find, and what I find on more than one occasion, is that the lower rung guys will use the name of their boss. And the reason they do that is the more attention a spirit gets, the more energy it gets. So it's a way of doing something to keep the boss happy. Which raises actually another interesting point that I've been asked many times, and I don't have a good answer to. And it kind of bothers me I don't have a good answer to it, to be completely honest. Which is, can demons do something good? Or can demons even be redeemed to become angels again? Traditional Christian theology on the subject is no. Once an angel falls, the angel has fallen. It's a one-way trip. That said, from Father Joe, an exorcist, who was of that school of thought that if fallen angels are fallen angels are fallen angels, there's no going back for them. The answer to another question is yes. And that question is, can demons do genuinely good things? Not only can they do, but they actually sometimes do nice things for people. Now, many people, when they hear that, will think, oh, well, it's a long con. They're trying to get the person soul. They do something nice in the short term for a long-term evil. Father had a different take on that. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but the thing is, demons are doing a job, and demons have a boss. And just like humans, demons occasionally get fed up with the boss, get ticked off with the job, And just like, maybe you clock out 5 minutes early as your own mini rebellion, demons want to rebel too. So what do? There's nice things for humans just to piss off the people in charge of them. I think it's a slightly cynical view just by virtue of when you assume something's always evil and only can do evil things, everything it does, even the good things, you assume have evil motives. But on the other hand, I do kind of like that idea of they're the original rebels in the universe. Of course, they still want to rebel. Chris Palermo from the chat did have a comment I wanted meant to read, which is other than Christian myth of angels and demons, all spirits of nature were created to fill a given task. Each grouping has its given field of knowledge and skills, like Greek nymphs. Not only would I absolutely agree with you, Chris, I would say that applies to angels too. Angels don't just exist to look pretty or to perch on people's shoulders and tell them to do the right thing. They have multiple purposes given to them by God, not all of which are pretty. But angels were created for a purpose, just like other types of spirits. Okay, that's cute. Short YouTube video, Dantalion, by a little girl looking for a friend. Due to the lettering she misread, Dantalion, how to summon a fiend as friend. So she calls the Duke of Hell Danny Lionflower. I'm gonna have to look that up because it sounds hilarious. And there's tons of stories like that over the years of people summoning demons by mistake or asking demons to do silly things. There's a fictional story about a mathematician who summons up accidentally summons the devil while working on Fermat's last theorem. I thought it was just a fiction story, but apparently there's at least a couple urban legends of that happening.
I saw that there was a episode of I think Tales from the Dark Side.
I think you're right.
Yeah, because I remember that episode. He's trying to get help with a problem, and the demon tells him that, oh, you have to give me a task, and then I claim your soul and all that, and blah blah blah. And so finally, he asks him a couple of questions, and the demon's like, I can answer anything, I can do anything. There's no task you can give me that I can't complete. So after setting him up and asking him a couple of questions about how he could go anywhere, he's like, okay, get lost. The demon flips out because it's the one thing he can't do.
Yep. There are stories like that in mythology as well. There's a funny story I first read about in a fiction novel called I, Lucifer, which is basically supposed to be Satan's memoirs. Well, he's taking a vacation, a God-induced vacation on Earth.
Yeah.
It starts out as a pretty good book. At the end, it gets weird, and I'm not a huge fan. But he mentions how there's this fairly nasty human being in the Middle Ages who he's about to sell his soul to the devil, seal the deal, make sure he's going to hell. But he's like, I have one request before I do this. You were at the crucifixion, right? And yes, because of course Satan was. It's like, can you draw me a painting of it? And the story goes that the devil drew such a perfect picture. The man immediately realized what a horrible sin he was, repented of all of his crimes, and ran off and became a monk. Now, I thought this was just a funny fiction story when I read it in the novel. Yeah, it turns out the Vatican supposedly still has the painting.
So they say, yeah.
It's like, so somewhere the Vatican has a paint or drawing or something drawn by Satan himself of the crucifixion. They converted a man back to God because of its beauty. I'd kind of like to see that.
Sure, a lot of people would.
I will also say, because I happen to also be a fan, Serenity M16 comments of that the Italian story. There's a movie out called Dear Santa.
Yeah, dear Satan. Yeah. The kid thinks he's writing to Santa, but he writes to Satan instead.
Because he has dyslexia.
Yeah, and Satan is played by Jack Black.
It's a fantastic movie. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Particularly because Jack Black is really fun in that role.
Yeah.
Um, what's funny about this as well, to give a plug to two friends of the show, in fact, is there's a collection of short stories called The Santa Heist, written by John French and Patrick Thomas, years before Dear Satan, which has a short story in which a little kid writes a letter to Santa, but misspells it and writes it to Satan instead. About how he wants Santa to do something about I want to say stepfather, but his dad was extremely horribly abusive to him and his mother. It notes in the story that normally when this happens, as it does from time to time, Satan just sends it on to Santa as misdelivered mail. But in this case, no. Satan has to deal with it personally. And I'm not going to say more because it ruins the story, but I definitely recommend The Santa Heist. It is an incredibly fun book of all holiday themed short stories, the first of which being the titular Santa Heist, which is about a group of criminals in a comic book style universe robbing Santa Claus. Particularly funny because it's imagine if a couple of Joker's thugs and a couple of Mr. Freeze's thugs and Lex Luthor's thugs all decided to rob Santa. So none of them are big name villains. They're flunkies. To the point that at one point during the heist, they even make up the name of a fake villain they're working for just to deflect attention. And we have gotten off topic.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is a common habit of ours. So I'm trying to think. Do you have any more questions? I'm trying to think if there anything else to bring up.
The topic of demons. I mean, you can talk about your favorite demonic movies or,
Good question.
depictions.
The original Exorcist is obviously one of my favorites. Other than that, there's the Conjuring universe. The first two Conjuring movies were superb. The third one starts to get a little shaky, and I haven't seen this. I saw one of the spin-offs, which was the first of the Annabelle spin-off movies, which was awful. And I didn't bother with the other Annabelle movies, nor did I bother with the Lorna movie. Which is particularly odd because, as far as I know, Lorna wasn't one. The Warrens never did a case involving Lorna, so it's like, why is it? Nothing against making a movie about that bit of folklore. I don't understand why they had to be included in the overarching Conjuring verse, as it were.
I think they just saw an opportunity to get another movie in there.
True, and that whole universe is coming to, or at least the cinematic version of that universe is coming to an end. They're working on one last movie about Maurice Theriault, who was very nasty case of possession that happened. Oh, that's something I didn't even talk about yet. That happened in Massachusetts, Maine, or Maine or Massachusetts. I don't recall off the top of my head. But this also reminds me of a particular point, which is the word devil and what a devil is, and what the difference between a Satan, a devil, and a demon is. So the word devil, unsurprisingly, also comes from the Greek diabolos or diavolos, which means slanderer or accuser, which of course relates nicely to the word Satan, which is Hebrew, just for a change of pace, and means the accuser or the adversary.
Yeah.
And that's something worth noting. People will often say it just means adversary, and it's a generic term that can mean any adversary. That's not really true. Say the name Satan or the word Satan appears a couple of times in the Old Testament, and the very first time it's used, it is kind of generic, but most of the time it's ha-Satan, which means the adversary, which means it's very clearly referencing a specific individual. But now that I'm also worth noting, because this is a common mistake I've run into before, people sometimes claim that the word devil comes from the Hindu deva. Because in Hinduism, a deva is actually a god in a benign figure. First, that's not actually true. I mean, yes, that's what deva means in Hinduism, but that's none of the language. The Bible at no point was written in Sanskrit in its original languages. It was in Greek and Hebrew, not Sanskrit. So the roots are Greek words or Latin words or Hebrew words. The other thing to realize about that is if we assume that that's true, then it would be more likely that the word devil comes from the Persian word deva. Because in Zoroastrianism, which is the religion of Persia, there are Asuras, which are angels essentially, and devas, which are demons. Where in Hinduism, devas are angels or gods, and Asuras are demons. And Zoroastrianism is older than Christianity. So that's a more likely linguistic root. And if somebody still, and they probably did, I would guess, though I don't know for certain, that they probably got the word deva from the Hindus. Since both religions are older than Christianity. Actually, Hinduism is older than Judaism. That being said, in a practical sense, just like I said, there are angels and then there are archangels. There are demons and there are devils. Devils are the more powerful spirits. If you sit here and try to think of the name of a demon, you're probably actually thinking in the name of a devil. Most of the ones with famous names, the names that you see in the Bible or in other religions, are devils. They are the higher ranking spirits of hell. Or lower ranking, depending on how you look at it. And the very highest and most powerful would be Satan himself, the devil. It's worth noting again, since there's a whole command structure to this, most things that people run into are imps, which are the weakest demons, the ones that mostly serve as messengers for the big boys, then demons, then devils, then the famous devils, and then Satan almost never shows up. Because Satan's too busy telling everyone else what to do.
Yeah.
The only time Satan may have shown up personally, and even this is, I've seen people argue the interpretation, is that if you read the Gospels, it says that at the Last Supper, Judas Iscariot eats a piece of bread, and as he eats the piece of bread, Satan comes in behind with the bread. So you could make a decent case that Judas was possessed by Satan. Um, Depending on how you interpret it, a lot of scholars think that either the Antichrist will be possessed by Satan from the beginning or will be possessed sometime along his reign. And that's a whole other thing in theology that I'm not really looking to get into right now. Um, one very last bit of thing, mostly because this annoys me to no end. People will ask, usually on Quora, though occasionally I've seen it directed towards people like me, how do I become a demon? First of all, demons are spirits. If you're still alive, you can't be a demon. There is an idea in theology, aside from the Nephilim that we talked about earlier, they have angels, they have demons, have angels, they have humans. There's a concept known as a cambion, which is a half demon, half human. Um, but if such a thing has existed, no one's seen one in hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Um, you're not a people. You're not a demon. You're not a cambion. You don't want to be a demon or a cambion. This does raise a question about okay, well, what happens when people die? People have this idea that when you die, if you're a good Christian, you're going to go become an angel. If you're not a Christian or if you're a bad person, you become a demon. That's not theologically accurate. Damned souls do not become demons. And souls in heaven are greater than angels. They're not merely angel would be a step down. That being said, well, I have not directly encountered this myself. I have it from multiple people I would consider good eyewitnesses. Sometimes people in hell get dragged back up here to torment the living, which is not something that's fun for the person in hell. It's another way of torturing them. Um, People may be asking at this point fairly, how does one go to hell? How does one go to heaven? And I will, if anyone who has not seen the show before is wondering either question, these are questions for theologians. This is outside my area.
Well, it's very simple. One involves a highway, one involves a stairway.
Yeah. Or at least, yeah. But actually, that's not true. You can also get to heaven by a ladder.
Yeah,
There's a whole movie about this. Jacob's Ladder,
yeah, true.
which is also actually theological. It is an idea
I
from
know, but
Christianity,
I liked being able to pull out two musical references.
which is absolutely fair.
Also, like I said, it also nicely demonstrates the difference in the amount of traffic
Yeah.
that each route expects.
And funny enough, the Bible does describe a very narrow and difficult path to heaven with a very wide and broad lane to hell, implying exactly the same thing. And it was a good musical reference. I just had to go nerdy in my own way, dang it. And that's bringing us up to the end of the hour. And time to get going, I think.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
both a little tired.
Yeah, we're both tired. We put in an hour. We've got another movie coming, or another movie. We will have another episode next week, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on. I'm trying to bring up a calendar. I do not especially enjoy the way that they rearranged everything. But okay, there we go. So March 9th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will have another episode. And God willing, we'll have another episode every week until the 30th.
Yeah.
Because while we may or may not be home from the convention by 8 p.m., neither of us is going to want to do a show after being at the convention all night for 2 days.
Not after a several-hour drive.
Yeah. Even if my fiance comes and drives for us, we're not going to do it. But again, Telltale Steampunk Festival, check it out. If you live anywhere near Delaware, or not Delaware, Maryland, Baltimore area, Pikesville, come see it. It's $70 for the entire weekend. And then a hotel room, if they still have any, is $180 for the night. It should be a lot of fun. You can come meet me. You can come hear me talk. You can come hear Brian talk. You can come hear Dacre and some of the other people we've had on the show talk. It should be a really good time. They have a lot of cool stuff going on. I'm really looking forward to it, especially because I haven't done conventions in a long time. But that's going to do it for tonight. This is Kevin Mears saying, have a good night. And God bless. And Brian?
Saying, keep your fangs sharp.
Good night, everybody. See you next week.